Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. Today we have an episode that is all about kids wanting more stuff and entitlement, and it's really addressing the concerns that I hear from so many parents, especially at this time of year around the holiday time, that they're worried that they're raising kids who are greedy or materialistic or entitled and who really aren't grateful for everything that they do have if those parents are in a position where they have, food, a warm house, plenty of toys to play with and all of that. And they really worry about raising kids who just don't have that perspective on how really privileged they are. So we have a question from a listener, Jude, who wrote in. You'll hear her question in a second. She's all for welcoming feelings, but what if the feelings were big about not getting the present that you wanted from your auntie? And then we have a replay of my kids that I interviewed last year at this time, talking about their growth and their evolution from those kids who might have cried when they didn't get the present they wanted, and those kids who had the mile-long letters to Santa about everything that they wanted, who really evolved into kids who do have perspective and do appreciate the things about the holidays that are not about presents. And they have a really, if I do say so myself, and you'll hear them, they really do have a good handle on what's important in life, and their values are not in the things that they get. So first, let's hear Jude's question.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Jude, and I live in Oxford in the UK. I'm a massive fan of your work and podcast. I think it's a really valuable tool, so thank you so much for doing it. And I think it's awesome. My question is a little bit pertinent to this time of year, with it being Christmas. I'm totally on board with allowing my child to feel his big feelings of sadness, disappointment, frustration, boredom, excitement, all of those things. What I find really hard is basically when there's a sense of entitlement that goes with it. So if he's having a bit of a meltdown or crying his eyes out because the toy that he got given by his auntie wasn't the one that he wanted, and I try really hard to let him have that feeling of disappointment, but there's a big part of me that really wants to teach in that moment and just say, hey, there are children out there who would love to have even a tenth of what you've got. There are children who won't even get breakfast on Christmas Day, let alone a present. And I just find it really hard not to feel that I'm kind of feeding that sense of entitlement when I allow those big feelings around areas of gratitude and thanksgiving. So I just wondered if you could maybe speak about that. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.
Well, first of all, Jude, thank you so much for your kind words about the podcast. And I would love it if you left a review and told one friend about the podcast. And if everyone listening could leave a review, that would be amazing. And if you could tell a friend about the podcast, screenshot it right now and share it with someone that you care about who you think would like to also listen and learn more about peaceful parenting, I would super appreciate it. So thank you so much. Made my day. Okay, to your question. First of all, I love that you said that you are really aware of welcoming all of your child's feelings and that you know how important that is. And so I would encourage you to remind yourself that the only way out of a feeling is to go through that yucky swamp, right? You can't go over it, can't go under it. You've got to go through it. Those feelings that can be messy, and really the only way to get past a feeling is to go through it. So you're really on the right track. And I want to just say that even though, or even when those big feelings are about not getting the present that you want, the only way is to welcome the feelings. So just stay the course on that. I also want to give you a little bit of perspective that it's possible, that this time of year, kids are really, they've had a lot of sugar. They might not have had as much sleep. There's a lot of anticipation and excitement and dysregulation. And, it's possible that your son is just emptying his emotional backpack after a really intense holiday season, and that, okay, he didn't get the present that he wanted from his auntie. And this is a good opportunity for him to let out all of those feelings and to really empty his emotional backpack. So you can remind yourself of that in the moment. I think that will help you to have a little bit more patience and compassion for that. I think any parent would be upset about that lack of apparent gratitude for the wrong present when, as you said, some kids don't even get breakfast on Christmas morning. So along with reminding yourself that he's emptying his backpack and that we don't get to choose what kids are upset about, right? We have to empathize even when we don't agree, and we know the only way out is through that feeling, welcoming those feelings so that he can get to the other side. I would also encourage you to try to stay in the moment. I think you're zooming out, right, to, oh my gosh, and I think he sounds like he's probably around 5 or 6, if I had to guess. You didn't say how old he was, but you're zooming out to 15 or 16 or 25 or 26 to this person who's entitled, who doesn't care about other people, who just wants what they want. And I would encourage you to come back to the moment whenever we get caught up in fear about what does this mean? If your child's hitting you, oh, he's going to turn out to be a domestic abuser or whatever. How your child is at age 5, there's no indication he's going to be the same way at age 15 or age 25. So just stay in the moment. Here's my little guy. He's having a hard time right now. Remind yourself this is not an indicator of his future character or the kind of person that he's going to turn out to be. Because really, if we get hijacked by our own fear, he can't co-regulate with us. And also, we can't show up and support him in the moment because it's become about us and about our fears. I am going to address the entitlement fear. It just is sort of, this is like, I see this question as two-part. There's the emotional part and then there's the entitlement part. So I'm going to address that in a second. But the final thing I want to say about the emotional part is even if you did decide that there is something that you need to teach him about gratitude or about entitlement, the time to do it would not be when he is hijacked by his big feelings and caught up in the emotion of the moment. What we know about getting hijacked or dysregulated is that our thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex, is actually unavailable to us. It's actually offline, and we can't think clearly. We've lost our sense of perspective, and we have lost our ability to think rationally about something. So even if you did decide there is a lesson here for him, the moment is not now. It's a conversation for later. So just remind yourself, all I have to do right now is show up for him in his big feelings, empathize, welcome the feelings. If I need to teach, I can do it later. Okay, let's talk about your fear that he is going to grow up to be entitled. Again, you'll be able to hear from my kids. So you're going to hear that even though those little kids who wanted every single thing in the Lego catalog, it doesn't mean that's how they're going to turn out. It's normal for us as humans to want more. That's sort of how we're wired. If we were meek and just sat in a corner somewhere, we would never get our needs met. We wouldn't get the things that we need for survival or for pleasure. And for small humans, especially, it's normal for them to always want more. As we grow, we become more aware of what is reasonable and what we really need versus what we want. But when kids are little, it's totally normal to want more. And again, this doesn't mean that he's going to always be like this. The other thing that's totally normal is that he lacks perspective on those children who don't even have breakfast on Christmas morning. So if you took a child that was raised in a situation where they did not have privilege, or even maybe where there was neglect and their basic needs were not met, and you dropped that child into your house right now on Christmas morning, they would be so appreciative and grateful because they actually do have the perspective of not having enough. And your son doesn't have that perspective yet, and that's okay. He's still little and he's still learning, and it's actually appropriate for him to not have that, in some ways, like really hard knowledge of the world. Like, I'm not saying you shield kids from the hard knowledge of the world, but you also don't want to overwhelm them with all of the suffering in the world. And that's something that comes gradually. And I'm going to speak to that in a minute about how we can help educate kids. But just tell yourself for right now, it's normal and natural that he doesn't have that perspective because of the situation in which he's grown up. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that he's heartless or lacks empathy for all of the other kids that don't have as much as he has. It's also normal for small kids to get upset about small problems. It's normal for a 3-year-old to be upset because you cut the muffin in half, or a 5-year-old to be upset because they didn't get the present they wanted on Christmas, or for the, 8-year-old to be upset because they didn't get invited to the birthday party, and the 12-year-old to be upset because they didn't make the soccer team. And as you listen to me, you hear the problems are getting bigger, right? So small kids have smaller problems, and these are sort of like the training wheels for them to develop resilience. Resilience is not that you don't get upset about things. Resilience in this case wouldn't be that your son wasn't upset that he didn't get the present that he wanted for Christmas. Resilience is getting upset and recovering. Resilience is going through hard things and knowing that you're going to be okay on the other side. That's true resilience. Resilience is all about the knowing that you can handle it and the recovery. It's not about not getting upset. So in this case, we know as adults this is a small problem. He didn't get the present he wanted. However, this is how he's going to learn to tolerate those bigger problems as he gets older, is being upset and making it through the small problems. Finally, I just want to say that he will learn appreciation and gratitude and learn not to be entitled in a day-to-day basis, not over one event in one Christmas morning, but through the things that you teach him and the things that you model for him, and how he sees you being grateful, and how he sees you helping other people, and how he sees you, appreciating the things that you have in life. And it's something that happens every day over the course of our child's life. So we have to be careful not to isolate it to one moment where we see them showing up without that gratitude or appreciation. If there's things that you feel that you want to do above and beyond, living your life in a way that teaches him this way, you might think about maybe getting some age-appropriate books about other children who don't, have as much, or how other people in the world live. You might think about ways that you can look close to home for opportunities to help or opportunities to give. You might do something like helping out a neighbor, or you might save, part of your child's allowance or their gift money that they give and donate it to some charity that they feel excited about. So those are some ways that you can help it along just outside of living your normal everyday life full of gratitude. One thing I did with my kids was I forced them to write thank you notes whenever they got a present. And there was some heel dragging, but I would say, listen, if you can't show that you are grateful for this present, I don't know how you can expect your grandparents or your auntie to go through the effort that they made to, first of all, earn the money and then go ahead and get you the present. So when they were little, they would draw a picture, and then I would write their words, and we would mail it off. And as they got older, they would do it themselves. So I think that was important as a practice. I'm not saying you have to do thank you notes, but that was something that we found was really helpful in our family for that appreciation for the things that they did get. Jude, I hope that was helpful, and I really appreciate you sending in this question. To be honest, I'd already recorded the introduction to the episode that we were going to share again with my kids. And then this question came in yesterday. And so I called Simona, my podcast manager, and I begged her, can we please redo the introduction? Because I really want to include this question from Jude, because it was so pertinent and a great introduction to hearing from my kids. And I would like to remind everyone listening, if you want to leave a question for me to possibly answer on the podcast, you can go to this address. It's pipe.com/peaceful parenting podcast. There's also a link on my website on the podcast tab. You can record a question just like Jude did, and I might answer it on the podcast. And also, I just want to take a second before we dive in and hear from my kids to remind you, if you love this podcast, I would love for you to support us. It's patreon.com peaceful parenting. So that's patreon.com peaceful parenting, and you can learn more about how you can support us on the podcast. And let's just meet my kids without further ado. Again, this is from last year. In case you didn't catch it last year, you want to listen to it again, I hope you enjoy it. I loved interviewing them, and I am so proud of them and lucky to be their mom. Just a little note, there are some spoilers in here about the red-suited man, so you might not want to listen to this with kids around. But before we dive into the interviews, I just want to acknowledge that this is a very privileged position, that we have the privilege of being able to be concerned that our kids have too much stuff, or they're getting too many presents, or that they're worried too much about getting things and being able to buy things. For a number of years when our kids were little, my husband was a student and I was a stay-at-home mom, and we really didn't have any money. We really had to watch every penny, but we still had privilege because we got government assistance, child tax benefit. We live in Canada where we have socialized medicine, so we didn't need to worry about health insurance. And we also had the family safety net privilege, which was that we knew if we ever were really in dire straits, our parents would help us out. And our kids had privilege even though we didn't have money in those years because they got a lot of presents from their grandparents. I think we mentioned that in the interviews that are coming up. So my husband and I, we didn't have much money, but we didn't need to worry about buying them gifts because they had 5 sets of grandparents. Hello, divorce and remarriage. So I just really wanted to acknowledge that I am speaking from a place of privilege. My children are speaking from a place of privilege. And those parents who reached out to me concerned about too many presents and materialism and what are we going to do when our kids just want so much stuff, they are also speaking from a place of privilege. And many, many, many parents don't have that. They don't have enough money to buy presents for their kids. And, those kids might be in school with kids who get tons of presents at Christmas. So 2 small things that we can do. And I know these are really just a drop in the bucket, but while I'm here, I'm just going to make 2 suggestions for all of us listening who are coming from a place of privilege. One is that we don't get big presents from Santa. If we do celebrate Christmas and we do the Santa tradition, we don't give our children big presents from Santa. That's one thing because, what about kids who are getting hardly anything, if anything at all, from Santa? And another is that we make donations. Those of us who have privilege, we either make donations to food banks or we make donations of buying new presents. It's great to donate things that your kids no longer play with, but what I'm asking here is that we donate new presents to organizations that will then distribute them to kids who are less financially privileged. I know that's not a ton, and I always feel kind of nervous and vulnerable when I talk about things like this. I'm still learning and I'm not perfect. However, I just wanted to address the issue of privilege, financial privilege, before we dive in. So let me introduce you to my kids. If you didn't hear them in episode 1 of the podcast when they were talking about what it was like to be raised by peaceful parenting, you might want to go back and give this a listen. But let me introduce you to Maxine, who's 14, Asa, who's 17, and Lee, who's 20. You're going to hear each of their perspectives on stuff and presents and materialism and consumerism and what they think parents should do to raise kids who have great values. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, Maxine.
Hello.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks.
Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Maxine, and I am your child.
How old are you? I know how old you are, but other people don't.
I'm 14.
All right. So do you remember when you were little, what was the best thing about birthdays, Christmas, holidays?
Oh, presents, I guess.
I think
I probably shouldn't say that because I know that's like what the thing podcasting is about.
No, it's okay. Like that's what I'm trying to normalize the fact that for little kids, it's all about presents, right?
Yeah.
So do you think you're still in that phase at 14 that it's mostly about the presents?
Well, not really. I like spending time with you guys because especially since Lee moved out.
Mm-hmm. So you're looking forward to having your brother come home at Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
What else is meaningful to you about the Christmas holiday?
Well, literally, you and Dad don't have to work that much when it's Christmas. And so we get to spend the whole day together. And we always have a nice breakfast. And sometimes I get to help you with that and stuff like that.
One of my favorite things the past couple of years that we've been doing is the family walk on Christmas.
Yeah. It's fun. And we always take Emmy, and she's always so happy to be with all of us.
Yeah, because she never gets all 5 of us to take her for a walk at once.
Emmy's our dog, by the way, if you don't know that.
So do you still like the presents?
Yeah, I still like presents, but who doesn't like presents? Even you and Dad like presents.
That's true. But the time with family is you're starting to appreciate that more as you're getting older. Do you ever remember getting a present you didn't like when you were a kid?
No, but I remember being disappointed that I didn't get presents that I wanted.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
When I thought that Santa was real and I would make lists and I wouldn't get all of the stuff, I would be kind of sad. But
Yeah. And how do you think that affected you as a person?
I don't think it really mattered. I think I was just a little kid who wanted to have all the presents that I wanted.
Yeah. Do you think that's pretty normal?
Yeah.
Do you think parents should worry about that?
No, I think you shouldn't worry, but like I think it's like weird if your kids aren't excited about presents and don't want lots and lots of presents.
Yeah.
Because
So
that's like a normal thing for kids to want.
And so what do you think happens as you get older and now you're like, yeah, I still like presents, but that's not the most important thing?
I think when you're little, you don't understand what the holidays and like what that's all about. But like when you get older, you realize that it's like more about just being able to like spend time with people and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like it's nice to like give people presents instead of just like always getting presents.
What have been your favorite presents that you've given?
I don't know, like when I give brothers like records or stuff like that, and it just seems to make them like happy, then it makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember making presents?
Yeah, I made presents like this year or last year. I made those little like tree decorations for brothers and you and dad and all the grandparents and stuff.
That's right. Those were nice.
Those little candy cane things.
Yeah, those were sweet.
Also, I like Christmas because it's all like nice, like and cozy, and just like on like Christmas or like just any holidays that we do as a family, but especially Christmas, like when we're just like all sitting around and like listening to music and it's all cozy in our house and stuff. And then we can like look outside and stuff like that.
I love that too. I love decorating the tree and then sitting and looking at it afterwards, having hot chocolate.
Yeah.
That was a tradition that I did growing up too.
Cool. Also, sometimes on like Christmas or like, yeah, mostly Christmas or New Year's, when like our grandparents call to just like say like Happy New Year's or Merry Christmas.
That's
and
nice.
You get to like talk to them, and usually I call your mom I always show her all my presents and stuff.
Nana listens to the podcast. Do you want to say hi to her?
Hi, Nana.
One of the other things that parents were worried about and why I'm making this podcast is that sometimes little kids seem really ungrateful. Like they get like a whole giant pile of presents and then they're like, I wanted the blah, 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 or I didn't get that, or why did he get more? What do you think those parents need to hear when they have little kids? What do they need to hear from an older kid?
Like I said before, like when I would not get presents that I wanted, but I would still get other presents, I would like be sad or like unhappy about it that I didn't get the other presents that I wanted. But like after, I would realize like how fun the presents that I actually got were. And like honestly, if you have like a 4-year-old and they're upset about not getting something, then they're literally 4, so you can't really like think that they're ungrateful because they don't even know what that word means. They probably don't even know how to say that word. So
True enough.
Can't really worried about their being ungrateful because they don't even know what that is.
Right. And they don't have anything to compare it to, right?
Yeah, because they're literally 4.
So if parents are really worried about that, they think their kids think that like toys are the most important thing, what would you say to those parents?
Well, kids are just kids. Kids, like I'm still a kid, but I know that presents aren't like the only thing that's like good about like holidays and stuff, but I'm still like learning. And if your kid is like younger than me, then chances are they'll like know even more or less about that.
Right.
So, like honestly, like kids are just kids and they just think that presents are so cool and exciting that they don't know that like there's more to it than like presents.
Right. Do you think there's anything that parents like could or should do to like teach their kids that their things are more important than presents?
Well, you could like do like tradition, like what we do, like where you go on like a walk or what you do decorating your tree as like a family or something, or like doing something like you celebrate Hanukkah, like doing like little traditions for that and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like when they're older, they'll see like, oh, when we did all those things, those were like nice traditions that my parents did. And
could you think of any other traditions that were important to you?
When we decorate cookies.
I was thinking about that too. That's a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to doing that this year.
And I already promised one of my teachers, Miss Miller, that I was going to give her cookies. So we have to do it.
We absolutely will.
Because she loves sugar. So we have
she
to
loves sugar.
She does.
Yeah, I think you've always liked giving presents too. Is there anything else that you think parents should know about if they're worried about their kids thinking that, stuff is more important than people?
Honestly, just what I said before. Kids are just kids and they don't know anything other than presents. So like, don't think it's a big deal because eventually they'll realize more things about holidays like I did. But if your kid's like 6 and they're like so excited about the presents and that's all they can talk about, then honestly, that's like a normal kid behavior.
Right. And not worry about it.
Well, not like normal, but like that's like a lot of kids are like that.
Yeah. And I think it's, if we can be excited for them too, right?
Yeah. Well, if you can like show them that it's so great that they're excited about it, and you can be like, I'm excited too.
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll see that it's not something bad. But if you like tell them like, no, you shouldn't be this excited about presents, that's not allowed.
That's right. Hey, do you remember, this is one thing I forgot to ask your brothers about, but do you remember times when you've gotten an experience instead of like a thing that you can hold in your hands for a present?
People have just like given me like a ticket to like go do something with me or something. Yeah. Just for fun.
I think Mimi took you to a show once.
Yeah.
And hasn't Uncle Les used to do like sleepovers and movie night?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think kids like that?
Yeah. I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a normal kid.
What, you're not a normal kid?
No.
Why aren't you a normal kid?
Because I'm not. I don't know how to explain it.
I think you're a pretty normal kid.
No, I'm extraordinary.
You're also hilarious. Thanks, darling.
You're welcome.
Love you.
You look funny with those big headphones on your head.
Yeah, I'm sure I do. Love you, kid.
Oh, I love you.
Hello? Okay. Let's get started. Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Asa. I'm your son. I'm 17.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
So when you were little, you and your brother, your older brother Lee, used to like spend hours looking at the Lego catalog and like circling all the things that you wanted.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And then I remember one year, and also Dad used to really worry about that. He used to worry that you guys were like, your values were out of place and you were going to be like just like super greedy kids and not care about the right things. And
yeah, he was right.
He was right?
Yeah.
Are you super greedy?
No.
I remember one year when I think you were around 11, and I said the grandparents are starting to ask like what you want for Christmas because they, wanted to get you something. And you stopped and you thought and you said, Mom, I think I have a pretty good life. I can't think of anything I want. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you go from like the 5-year-old who was like wanted everything in the Lego catalog?
I think, I don't know. I kind of just grew out of it, I guess is the best way to say it. I don't know. My brain chemistry changed.
So do you think that's typical of 17-year-olds that do you feel like you want, like most kids your age don't want that much stuff?
Yeah. The thing is, I don't really play with toys anymore. Mm-hmm. So when I was little, like you can never have too many toys. You just get more and more and more and they're all good. But like now thinking about it, the only thing that like I'm missing in my daily life is a backpack big enough to put all my stuff in it. So that's like the only thing I want, like when I think about it, what would make my life better right now? The only thing I can think of is a bigger backpack.
Bigger backpack. Okay.
Bigger backpack.
Yeah. I think Santa has gotten wind of that. So you don't have too long to wait for the bigger backpack. Well, actually, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like you're sort of unusual for kids your age in terms of like not being into like brand name stuff. Do you think that's true, or are most of your friends?
Yeah, no, I would say that's true.
So why do you think that is?
As you get older, you value different things. Just your values change. don't really care so much about just accumulating plastic tchotchkes and kind of more focused on just having a good time.
Well, I know you don't want like little, toys from the dollar store or Lego kits anymore, but why don't you want like the brand name sneakers? And like you haven't even gotten any sneakers in like 2 years or something, right?
Mm-hmm. I've evolved past that.
But what is it? Okay. What I'm trying to say is I think you're unusual. Like I think you're unusual for somebody 17 who's in grade 12, who's not like, oh, I need these sneakers and that expensive thing and the latest iPhone. I want to hear about anything that you think would be helpful for parents who are wanting to make sure that their kids don't grow up to be greedy and materialistic.
They won't. Or maybe they will, but it doesn't really some people are like that and some people aren't. Everybody, when they're little, wants Lego and wants to look in the Lego catalog. Like whatever you do then is not going to shape. Maybe your kid will grow up and be greedy, but you telling them that they shouldn't look at the Lego catalog isn't going to change that. It's not guaranteed that everybody's going to grow out of that, but whatever you try and do is not going to change that. It's already kind of preset. Like let the kids do whatever they want, and then maybe they'll be greedy, maybe they won't, but it won't really have any effect on it.
Right. So you're saying that it's other things, not what they want when they're little. It's other things that decide how they turn out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's pretty normal for little kids to just want lots of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, one thing I talk about, it's like hardwired evolutionarily for them to want stuff. Because if they were just like quiet and meek in a corner, then everyone would forget about them.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you started to feel sort of grateful for your life that you have?
I am grateful now, and I probably wasn't when I was 3. So somewhere along the line,
between
maybe
3 and 17,
maybe 5 years ago. I don't know. It's just sort of a gradual thing.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to pinpoint that. You said that parents, whether they tell their kids to not want so much stuff or not, it's not going to make a difference. But do you think that it's that you sort of like internalized what was important in our family, and that because Dad and I aren't like really into like brand names and buying stuff, that was sort of how you developed too?
Yeah, I would say I cared about this stuff most when I was in like grade 6 and 7. And I felt really weird telling you guys like I wanted shirts with company logos on them and stuff. I don't know. It just felt out of place in our family. Yeah.
Why do you think it was grade 6 and 7? That was the time when you wanted the most like brand name stuff?
Because brain development wise, that's when you want to fit in the most.
That makes sense. And at a certain point, you just, I don't know. One of the things that I admire about you is that you don't care what other people think in a good way. Like you have your own idea of what you like and what's cool. But when you were little, what was the most important or meaningful thing about Christmas or birthdays?
I guess the anticipation of all the presents and celebration and whatnot. Like when you actually get there, it's like whatever, but it gives you something to look forward to leading up to it.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably the most important thing.
The excitement of the possibilities of what you might get and do.
Yeah.
What about now? Has anything changed?
Well, I used to have birthday parties when I was a little kid. I don't really do that anymore. So birthdays definitely don't feel as significant. Christmas, kind of same mold, but again, I'm not so much into like which Lego am I going to get this year. So I don't know. I guess I value just the food and the family and everything else about Christmas more than the presents.
Nice. Well, thanks, Ace. Was there anything that you think parents should know about this topic of, worry about too much stuff and too much importance on stuff?
Make sure your kids are staying somewhat grounded to reality, but just relax too, because they're little kids. And yeah.
Thanks, Ace. Bye.
No problem. Bye.
Love you.
Love you too.
Hello.
Hi, Lee. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lee, your oldest son.
How old are you now?
20.
20.
And a half.
20 and a half. Yeah, we missed your half birthday this year. And for anyone who's listening who doesn't celebrate Christmas, I think this applies to birthdays or, any other holidays where kids get presents. But looking back on your childhood, do you remember like really wanting to get presents and loving to get presents when you were little?
Yeah, definitely. Next question.
Dude, I asked your brother this, if he remembered like looking at the Lego catalog and the two of you poring over the Lego catalog and circling everything you wanted.
I also remember. Yeah. you and Dad tried to like moderate that, or like, yeah, I remember you talking to us about consumerism. I don't know. I think I understood that stuff, but I think I still just wanted presents. I think that's kind of how it is for most kids.
For sure. It really stressed Dad out. He was worried about all of the wanting, like a lot of the parents, I think, that, wrote with concerns about this thing. But, you are a person now at 20 who I would say is pretty non-materialistic. But when did you become aware of, consumerism and materialism?
I think I was maybe as long as I can remember. I don't know. Like, I think definitely you taught me early, but also I think didn't sink in maybe till I was a young teenager. When was the first time that I was like, oh, you don't need to get me any presents? Which,
I don't
by
know.
the way, you always do still, but like, I'm pretty sure I always tell you that you don't need to now.
Yeah, I mean, we get presents because we want to get you presents, not because we feel like we have to.
But like when I was a kid, I wasn't like, oh, you don't have to get me any presents.
No, I mean,
I wanted presents
for sure,
much.
For sure. Do you ever remember?
I think it was enough times. Like, do you talk to your parents about the post-holiday letdown?
We haven't talked about that yet,
but that enough made me feel like, okay, maybe presents are not the name of the game.
Say more about the post-holiday letdown.
Somewhere around 3 p.m. on Christmas, you'd be like, well, that was that. Back to my comfortable life, I guess, but normal. And like, you'd stop feeling exciting and you'd feel like, was I really that excited? Because like then, like once the suspense is gone, obviously, who said that the anticipation is always better than the actual thing? Some philosopher said that, I think.
That's so funny because that's what your brother said when I said, what do you remember the most about being a kid and holidays and birthdays? And he said the anticipation.
Yeah, for sure.
So what would you say to parents who are worried about that their kids always want stuff and like more stuff? And even like, some kids, I think that post-holiday letdown looks like, crying about not having more presents at 3 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say it's okay. The kids are victims of the mass media, but you're probably already doing your best to counteract that and just have faith. You probably will if you generally are raising it. I don't know, like conscientious kid, they'll eventually probably come around. Like, how many adults do you know? This is what I'd say. How many adults do you know who are obsessed with presents?
Well, but
some people are very materialistic, but like generally people grow out of it, I think.
Well, there are tons of people though who get, the new iPhone with every update, or, not to like crush those people who like a new iPhone, but there are a lot of people who there are a lot of people who want the newest, fanciest thing and like brand name stuff. So I don't know.
Okay, I would say then, like, you guys really hammered that home with me, and I mean that's probably why I think what I do now, like to not be like people, not stuff. The old mantra.
People, not stuff. That's right. That was really the mantra of your childhood, wasn't it? And so, do you think it's because you internalize the values that we had?
Yes, probably.
For anyone listening, don't get me wrong. You guys got a lot of presents for Christmas, and not from us necessarily, because we didn't really have very much money when you were growing up. But like, yeah, you had a lot of grandparents. Like, you guys have 5 sets of grandparents, which is pretty crazy. Like 10 grandparents, and then aunties and uncles, and
big family.
I wouldn't say that you were spoiled, but there was definitely. You think you were spoiled?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't spoiled. More about having a bad attitude than anything else.
Yeah, I think spoiled is like when parents can't say no and they just give everything.
Right.
You may have had grandparents who couldn't say no and gave you everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you look back to being a little kid, what was really meaningful for you about Christmas or your birthday or any of those like exciting childhood holidays?
That I couldn't tell you. What was really meaningful? Just the thing itself. I don't know. You're very conditioned to be excited for those things for when you're young. Santa and
presents. Well, okay. So what about now? Like, since you've already said like, you don't have to give me presents, but what do you like the holidays, and what do you like about them?
I don't want to say I dislike them, but I'm not very much on like, I don't like ever like decorate, and I play Christmas songs when I get paid to, and
you play them for free at our house.
Yeah, on your request, that's true. I don't know. I think I'm pretty agnostic. Like, I also don't mind it. I mind it in November when people get excited about it, but when it's actually the season, it's cool. And same with my birthday. Like, I think it'd be cool to do something for my birthday, but it always ends up being pretty low key.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like a positive or a negative. I think that's just varies from person to person.
Is there anything that you're like, oh, it's, Christmas is coming, I'm excited about X?
I mean, yeah, I guess it still feels nice, like the intentional family time and the new Lego. And
Sorry, spoiler, you're not getting any Lego this year. Okay,
know.
so family time, you like the family time?
Yeah, seeing extended family. I don't know if we're going to this year. Yeah, I don't know. I think Christmas is cool.
Do you remember making presents for your siblings when you were growing up?
I remember making Asa the piggy bank.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought for a while I could maybe remember more, but I don't know.
Do you remember the sock monkeys that you made them?
Oh, vaguely.
Those were a lot of work.
Yeah, forgot about that. I don't think they liked them, I think.
Yeah, no, we still have them.
Yeah.
So do you remember when you were little? This is like changing gears a little bit from holidays to just like consumerism in general. Do you remember when you came home from Montessori and said that you wanted some
I know what you're about to say.
company
yes, I do remember
shirts?
that. Yeah. Could I?
Yeah.
4. I remember seeing, like, it's kind of weird to remember before you could read, but I remember just seeing what words were, seeing them on shirts and being like that.
And why do you think
freaking sweet?
Do you remember why you wanted
some of those?
Do you remember why you wanted company shirts? And yes, cool. Like we thought you meant like shirts that said like Gap on them or something like that. But it turned out when dad took you shopping at a thrift store,
I just wanted shirts with pictures on them.
But when you went, do you remember when you went to shopping with dad, like at Value Village or whatever, and to get company shirts?
Yeah, I remember getting a Superman button up. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. I don't remember any of the other ones.
I think you got shirts that said like T-Rex and, like just.
Well, I couldn't read. So
I know.
I didn't know what a company versus just a picture.
What do you think that did for you?
Made me cool. Have more friends. I'm joking.
No, you're very sarcastic.
No, I don't know. I think I remember being happy, like, to have a cool wardrobe. That's, if you want to talk consumer, I think I still like getting cool clothes. Like, I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Well, I don't go shopping that much, but like, I don't know. I don't think that part about me really changed.
You tend to buy secondhand clothes though, right?
I do tend to do that.
And that's just like a style question?
Style? I don't know. I think that fateful shopping trip that you're talking about, it was like a Goodwill or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember going there as a child. And then I had like 1 or 2 years, you probably remember this, where like in like the beginning of high school where I wanted to get all my clothes from H&M. And then I just went back to Value Village after that.
Yeah. No, I remember that.
Rebellious years of going to the mall.
So another thing that parents worry about is that their kids aren't like appreciative or grateful for, everything that they have in their life. And I personally think, well, yeah, of course they're not. That's what I think too.
Little dummies. Is that what you think?
No, I don't think they're little dummies. I think they just don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, for sure. That'll come with time, for sure.
Do you remember starting to feel appreciative and grateful for what you have?
Do I remember becoming conscious of it?
Yeah.
It always was something you guys talked about. It definitely slowly, very gradually became less abstract as I got more world experience.
Do you remember what we said? Because I don't totally remember what we said. Just
like, you are fortunate, I think, was the message. But anyways, I think I remember always like wanting, like, I never thought I'm not grateful, like, I think it just like when your kids just don't understand much. That's what I remember from being a kid. So like, how could you expect them to understand something as nuanced as gratitude? Well, I guess it's not that nuanced, but like,
or privilege, or whatever.
Privilege. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, like, it just comes with time, or like, you still have to make an effort, I think, to show them that, because I definitely know older people who don't really get that, but as I'm sure we all do. If you don't, you're one of them. So
I think it would be fair to say that the parents who are concerned about their kids, wanting their kids to be appreciative of their privilege, wanting their kids to be, grateful for the presents that they get and not to be too, consumerist or materialistic, are probably the ones that
you're probably already doing fine. Just
exactly. Yeah.
Talking to them about it. And within a decade, you'll have a little, and within a decade, look at they'll become the preachy ones and you'll get annoyed.
I think
They'll
that's
start
happened.
they'll start lecturing you about capitalism, and they'll be like, gosh darn it, what have I done?
I think that's happened to us a few times.
All I was trying to say, I wasn't trying to say don't get your kids presents. I think I've been pretty clear. I was just like, I never minded when you guys would talk about privilege and stuff when I was a kid. Like even if I did mind it, that would probably be more reason to try and reinforce those points. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like the golden rule of parenting podcasts is like, if you're concerned about this stuff, you're already probably doing pretty well. And if you don't think about it, then your kid is the one that needs help.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, in any case, those are not the people who are probably listening to this.
That's the parenting podcast paradox.
Okay, so let's just close by saying,
you better leave that in.
I will leave it in. The parenting podcast paradox, the peaceful parenting podcast paradox. You can add another P in there. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Lee, for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Love you.
Happy holidays to all your listeners.
Thank you so much for listening today. And don't forget to sign up for my weekend reflection email newsletter list. That is a great way to stay intentional about your parenting. And I will treat your email address very preciously. So you can go to sararosensweet.com/newsletter to sign up for that. And of course, you can unsubscribe at any time. And also, as a giant favor to me and all the kids out there whose parents need to know about peaceful parenting, please share this podcast, screenshot it, share it with a couple of friends, to anyone you know who you think could use it or you think would enjoy it. I'd super appreciate it. And I know that we're moving the needle towards a more peaceful world, one family at a time. And one last thing, pretty please. It would be amazing if you could follow the show or subscribe, whatever it's called, where you listen to your podcast or where you get your podcasts. And also to leave a review and a rating if you haven't already. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.